Spiritual contracts. Spiritual contracts form the foundation of much of the New Age spirituality. And it is important to understand them because contracts do form the basis of our current capitalistic system. So contracts are in a way the basis of the capital in capitalism and the basis of decisions and the basis of law, in fact. So if you take a piece of paper and you write down the word contract in capital letters, because it is, after all, that which one base one's capital on. It means you base your decisions on protecting your capital, your reason, your meaning. And the intent of the contract is what is always assessed so that a decision can be made about what happens when there's a dispute. Now, the word contract has got the word con in it, and the word act and the word tract, because intent in a way is attraction, so contract is also the law of attraction. Two parties or more parties agree upon a particular tract, that means a particular road, a particular outcome, that means a particular attraction that they want to achieve, that satisfy both parties. The intent being the spirit. Spiritual or spiritual is the intent of the contract to benefit all parties that participate. Obviously, if a contract is to be really valid, all facts should be on the table, which means that all the acts should be clearly described, and then also the outcome of this should be specifically understood. You'll find, for instance, that contracts in itself is the point that is protecting capital in society, which means contracts are the things that is protecting the 1% against the 99%, which is why the 1% can get away with all the capital, while the 99% remains the slaves or the labor. They are the means through which the 1% would obtain all their capital, and that is all done on a basis of contract. Now, the principle of as above, so below applies always, as in as out, because we are within consciousness. All things are always reflections or mirrors or patterns of each other. So therefore, you can conclude through deduction that in heaven it will work the same way. That means the 1% of the hierarchy will have all the capital, that means all the power, while the 99% will be the slaves or the souls that do all the labor, and then accordingly do exactly the same. And therefore all spiritual contracts will be based on the relationship between the 1% and the 99%, the relationship between those in power and those that apparently is working to achieve power. The fascinating thing is that in all of this, the actual actions that take place on a platform like Earth, which is specifically physical with specific physical laws that is measurable, can be superseded and changed into a different view through contracts. That would then cause one to create a belief, an interest about something, to have an outcome other than what is in fact portrayed, shown as fact of the actions on Earth. So for instance, everybody is born on Earth on a planet that supplies all its resources for free. That would mean by birthright each one has equal access to all the resources of Earth, but through contract that is then changed. That fact is changed through a contract to change the rules on how resources are managed on Earth. And these facts then get changed into new facts, the facts of the contract, which is then the spirit of the contract, which is then the intent and the meaning and the reason for the contract, and the actual facts are then denied. One has got to look at this from an interesting perspective, because if you look at it, that what is the real capital, you'll notice that the actual real capital is life. Because take away your life and everything else you do becomes pointless, useless, because it doesn't exist. So therefore the actual real capital is life. But with a contract, that fact is then changed into something that no longer is valid. And that is done through agreement, through contract, by giving a new meaning and reason to capital, where it can be owned, and slavery can exist, and inequality can exist. So making such a contract is quite strange. The problem being obviously that the contract is not necessarily made by the person that is now on Earth, but they are purely walking into a system that already exists through ages, where these contracts were existing throughout a long time. Can one trace back where it all started? Obviously, wherever it was agreed to such a point of inequality. More fascinating is that through the soul construct, similar contracts were engaged into, where the facts were denied and the soul were presented and eventually convinced by guides and hierarchy that they have to accept a particular contract in terms of spiritual growth, because apparently they are the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, so therefore there is something evil about them, something bad that they have to make better to become a better person, which simply through that simple spiritual contract you engage in, you are already submitting to the point that you are no longer the fruit of the tree of life. You are not the tree of life. You are not the seed of the tree of life. You are the seed of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Then you are born into this world to bear the fruit of this seed of knowledge as a polarity movement between good and evil that apparently create a pattern, a frequency, an energy, and in this energy you have to attract, function, direct, focus on the higher energy, because you want to get away from the lower energy, so you want to go to the positive, get away from the negative, because apparently you are inherently evil. So in Christianity that is said you are born in sin, but spirituality has taken that whole concept exactly like that and simply changed it into another way, another fact, the fact that you have to be positive, that you have to love, because love is the opposite of evil, but in fact in that all you are submitting to the idea that you are in fact born in sin, you are in fact flawed, because the very law you're basing it all on, and you are the one that creates the law through contract, is causing you to be, by your own decision and admission and allowance and acceptance, to be no different to the Christian that's born in sin looking for Jesus to save them. So now you're looking for energy to save you, while you are the one creating the energy through the contract that you're engaged in this world. And causing an interesting thing. Have you ever considered that all your spiritual gurus are but an extension of the hierarchy 1% of heaven, and thus the spiritual gurus are part of the 1% on earth that make sure that the 1% that's got the capital is protected from the 99%, which is you. and you end up following gurus and masters which will disengage you from your commonality, your community, your group as humanity, and make sure that you engage in the principle of you must do it by yourself alone, and only your feelings and your decisions are valid, and you have to find your own way. They make sure the separation is complete, because if they separate everyone into one instead of the group as 100% or 99%, then the one becomes equal to the 1% in a way that is controlling it all, and you become completely disempowered and can do nothing about your condition. Because by the contract you make with yourself and your self-interest, you have engaged yourself into this contract to have the result where you will inevitably, according to you and according to the promise made to you by the 1% of your masters, you will be able to apparently achieve the same point. So you want to become this 1%, this master. Well, in the meantime, it is impossible, because every single contract you have entered into never allow you to get to this point. It only allows you to miss the facts of all the acts and the actions that take place on earth, the wars, the abuse, the poverty, all the facts on earth you then deny, because according to your spiritual contract it must exist. And the spiritual contract now justify the set of facts that is illusion, while the set of facts, which is reality in the physical, is disregarded and called illusion. You'll even go as far as saying that the physical is an illusion, while your spiritual contract is real and the soul is real. All in the name of being part of the 99% that do the labor, while the 1% gets away with it all through the contract they make with you. And because you sign this contract, it becomes the signature, it becomes the sign nature, it becomes your nature. And the nature of life no longer exists, because you are no longer the tree of life, but you are the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So when a child is born for a single moment with a single breath, they are the tree of life. And from that moment onwards, everyone around them change that seed, genetically modifying it into a seed of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, so that eventually a child emerge and an adult emerge that are completely subjected to the contract that is existing in this world, where the contract becomes the capital instead of life. And so we have then a very strange form of capitalism, which allows massive abuse and which allows inequality in every way possible, while the very fact of the initial moment of birth where life exists equally, that being denied in every way possible. So it is really important to investigate this whole spiritual contract thing, because if you subscribe to it and you convince others to subscribe to it, you are in fact part of a massive con, a con that we call consciousness. It's all in the words, because it's about the living words. And there Jesus made it very clear that we are the living word. You are the living word. You are the living contract. You are the living spiritual contract. The spirit in which you do it is what could produce your facts, but it doesn't change the real facts. The real facts is that life in fact is equal, that life in fact no longer exists, because it's all been superseded by the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and you're the fruit of that. And it's going to take quite a journey to get back to the origin, the source, which is life. But according to your contract, that's not the source. The source is apparently some greater energy, but the energy is only the end result of all the friction that takes place on earth through the fruit of the knowledge of good and evils, because the energy is produced by the friction between the negative and the positive. and you then become only that energy. It's just a derivative, just an end product, much less than what created it. And then you claim that to be great. Amazing that one would actually fall for such a con, and then even get others to fall for such a con, and all in the name of being some master. It's really fascinating that this is taking place. So investigate the spiritual contract really deeply. Investigate the principles that we are representing, which is the principle that life must be returned to earth. And that is done through self-forgiveness. You have to give it to yourself through a process of self-honesty, where you take responsibility for what you have allowed, where you take away the permissions, you delete the contracts, and you get down to the facts that's really existing on earth, which is that life should be, in every way, be equal and equally participate in what is provided freely by the earth. Within that, we have set up the point of equal money, simply because money plays such a big role. Money is an illusion. So initial step would be to allow each one to do the necessary training to get themselves back to the facts and no longer part of the spiritual contract. That takes quite a while, because on average all your cells take 7 years to replace themselves, and who you are as consciousness are a product of what you have programmed into your cells. So it takes a commitment of 7 to 14 years to actually change yourself from being this machine, organic machine, that produce energy as thoughts, and these thoughts creating an aura of yourself which you call consciousness, which is obviously something you can experience because you've programmed it to experience it, and you've programmed it to experience it the way you like it, self-interest, and you have programmed yourself to only allow those things in your world that confirms your program. You call it attraction, but really it's not attraction, it's intention. You have intentionally set it up that way to only bring to you the things you like. It's all about self-interest, self-interest, self-interest. And it is really important, because you have to see how far this has gone. Watch the documentaries like The Trap, The Century of Self, and you'll notice to what degree you're in fact actually programmed to specifically protect the 1%, while you are in fact a slave. And the fascinating thing is they can get away with this, with you being satisfied with just feeling good, while you don't have all that the earth provide. They take it all. They take all the resources, while you get just the energy. Isn't that clever? And you fell for it. It's really amazing that you fell for it, that you can't see what you're doing to yourself and to this world and to life itself. We have a free training course to help Destiny I process light, where you can enlighten yourself properly and create the real I. The real I is the one that works with facts, that do not work with contracts, because contracts are not to the best interest of life. They are only to the best interest of those that is and control all resources. The same in heaven, that controls all the heavens. There are many mansions, many heavens. So the heaven part we sorted out, but I mean that's not part of this particular discussion at this stage. The particular point is to realize to what extent you've allowed yourself to be conned by the contracts you believe, through which you justify the reason why you are allowed to and must protect your spirit. Just having to protect your spirit already makes it not real. Just to be scared of the negative already makes it very clear that you are in fact weak, because you have fear. To focus on the positive is purely an admittance that you are in fact scared and fearful, and that you're fearful of the negative. Positive and negative in a physical reality do exist from a completely different perspective, like seasons. Seasons are the positive and negative of the physical. They are simply just a pattern of growth. They have no particular point besides that. The positive and negative of the spiritual contract, though, has got insidious amounts of bullshit attached to it, where you then deliberately would deny the right to life to many on earth so that you can have a wonderful life. So Join us. Let's have some fun.